What is up, gamers? Welcome back to another Predecessor video. I've been seeing a lot of Terra gameplay videos, but there's not really a build guide, and there's also not really a hero guide or an extensive hero guide. So I wanted to get that one going for you guys. Let me know if you do like these kind of videos. Let's get right into this one. Alright, so starting off, we'll talk about jungle, right? We want to talk about jungle first because that's what's important. What I've been seeing be very valuable for a first item is going to be your Berserker X. Berserker X is very good to have better ganks. It's also a very good slow after your dash, so you can kind of stick on people to use your Q after the dash, which feels really, really nice. So definitely recommend Berserker X as your first item. This is where your build can already vary. A lot of people can consider going Mutilator, although Mutilator is a more offlane oriented item where you usually build this on your first or second slots. Personally, I think actually Augmentation is a little bit better, giving you more damage and more ability haste than something like Mutilator would. Of course, Mutilator does give you that Omnivamp, which feels really nice, and it's also a lot of max health damage with your Q. When it applies Mutilate 2.5 times, that means that every one of your Q is going to apply that, so it's a lot of damage. We move to Augmentation, which is the item of my choice. I feel like this item benefits Terra a little bit more, combined with Berserker X, where you have 15 ability haste and 20 here. This item, in total, you're already going to have 35 ability haste. Of course, ability haste diminishing returns. I'll show you graphs of the diminishing returns if I do find one on the screen. Basically, the more ability haste you build, the less potent the haste becomes. But early ability haste in your first 3 items, if you have about 40 to 50 build, that's gonna feel really, really good for you. Next item, you could opt for Mutilator again if you want. Personally, again, you could do it if you are snowballing or something like that, but there's actually 2 other good items as well that you could consider. Something like Earthshaker, which I honestly kind of neglected this item, but the more I think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense because it increases the ability damage you deal, and a lot of her damage is actually ability based. So honestly, not too bad of an item. Also, melee heroes stack this item twice as fast, and it's also a lot of health. The other option, alongside Berserker X, would of course be Gaia Greaves. Gaia Greaves is a very good item, not only because it gives you a lot of move speed, but the stats on the item is kind of insane for the price. It's 2900, it's literally the cheapest item in the fighter category, and it has 350 health, 30 physical armor, 15 ability haste, and 20% tenacity. That is pretty insane. So this is where the build will vary. Your next 3 items are usually counter build items. However, let's just say you don't want to counter build, you just want to go straight up for damage. You can go these other 2 items right here, and you can even go something like Tainted Blade to boost your team's damage by 8% so when you hit somebody with an ability and shred their armor. You can also go items like Citadel, for example, which is not too bad. Of course, this might be too late. Also, Citadel actually doesn't have that much synergy with Augmentation because it does true damage and you're shredding their armor, so a bit less valuable. That's kind of why also I do not really recommend Basilisk on this. You can do it for your team, but you're gonna get not as much value as you think. It's still gonna be valuable, don't get me wrong, but on the true damage after casting an ability or the true damage from her Q, it becomes a little less potent. You can also go something like Salvation if you want. If I had to choose a build at the end with looking for full bruiser damage, I would probably look at something like Mutilator right here, maybe a bit earlier even, maybe do this into this. Again, usually I counter build the last 2 items, so you kind of want to counter build, but if you want to go straight up damage, go ahead, bro. Like try cooking something with something like this and like this. Maybe put even a Draconum in there if you really care. Although this is probably like pretty good in terms of damage. Again, in terms of damage. Alright, let's go back to counter building. Now, when you're counter building, that probably means your last 2 items are very, very situational. Into a lot of CC, when you're getting bursted, Salvation is actually pretty good. So that item can slot in on the 5th slot here. However, there is other items that are really, really good on here if you're opting to go into the tank route, and I'm going to talk about them right here. Starting off with Giant String. Giant String is actually a really, really good item that fits her playstyle a lot. It gives you a lot of CDR, not just through stats only, but through that Retribution passive. It also gives you damage mitigation, when you're ulting. The small negative is that you kind of do have a bigger hero size, so in a more damage oriented build, you probably don't want to have this item per se, but like Jenny, this is one of her better items, so you should still kind of fit it in because it's actually a really good item. You also get your cooldowns increased twice the effect on once you do ult or and proc this item, so it's pretty nice. An item that you could also go is Frostguard. Frostguard is a great item into carries, into a lot of attack speed champions. I think maybe now if I'm not too sure yet, right? But if Revenant is on the enemy team and he is actually feeling much better this patch because of the recent buffs, you can go something like Warden's Fate. Best item to counter him over any other ADCs, or honestly, it's good into anyone building crit, but it's better into Revenant, of course. And you could have other items like Void Helm, which doesn't have too much synergy, but it does have some synergy with Mutilator because of the Omnivamp on this. Although, realistically, you probably want something like Crystalline Cure if you want to go the MR route. You can also go something like Tainted Bastion, which gives you damage mitigation. Of course, it is an MR item. However, you can proc this anti-heal on ADCs as well if they are going something like Stormbreaker, which is an item that actually does magical damage. If we look here, this item does magical damage, so this will work. If they hit you with a Stormbreaker proc, you will apply this passive. You will take less damage because those enemies are now blighted by your item. I don't quite know if this item is also magical damage. I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, I think Tainted Rounds is also magical damage. And I'm pretty sure Lightning Hawk is as well, so any one of these three items apply magical damage on their on-hits effect. So yeah, they are going to proc this item for you, even if you're running into carries, but primarily a lot of AP damage. Right, now I do want to talk about the offlane build. The offlane build varies just a little bit. I think you start augmentation preferably if you are into a lane that does damage. That a laner that does damage like Grux, for example, something like Feng Mao, anything that you feel like you want to deal damage into damage but also get some health. If you're playing into a tank, actually, you can also opt for Mutilator first. Mutilator probably a little bit better to deal with the tanks building armor, so you can go Mutilator if you want. Although this does true damage, of course, yes. The issue with augmentation is that you kind of want to sustain true tank damage because tanks don't do as much damage. So having this Omnivamp, having this max HP damage is generally a little bit better as a first item into tanks. And then you can go augmentation second. So these items are going to be very interchangeable. If you're into a tank, you go like this. If you're into anyone that does damage in lane, you probably go something like this. All right, so third item is when you start counter building. So this is gonna vary a lot, but if you want damage, you probably could go something like Berserker X, and ironically, it still is gonna be pretty good for you. It's gonna be a lot of damage, so there's nothing wrong with it. If you're gonna run into somebody that's healing a lot, like a Grux, maybe Tainted Blade might not be bad, right? So that could be an option. If we're running into somebody that does a lot of burst damage, like a Kalari or a Feng Mao, you could go something like Gaia Greaves. That's not bad. You can also go something like Citadel. Also not bad. They're all good options. If I had to give you guys a general build of where like would generally work in a lot of matchups, I would tell you to go something like this. One other item that I actually haven't mentioned that I completely kind of forgot about it. If you're into an AP matchup, you probably go Mist Meadow Buckler. If you're into a Shimby, by the way, you probably skip Mutilator. I think you go straight into Mist Meadow Buckler. You can get Mutilator after. That's also pretty good. So if you're into a Shimby, do something like this maybe, or even something like, like this. There we go. That also works. Definitely pretty decent build. I'm gonna mention one more item that definitely would work, and that is Ella Frost. You can go Ella Frost. It's a great item to give you more mana because she is kind of mana hungry. So this item gives you a lot of more mana, and also it offers you a slow, which is kind of nice when you're using your Q. And the damage it does is actually pretty good as well because you're gonna be building a lot of health after this, right? All right, let's get back on track. Let's say this is your build right now. We're covering a bit of armor and a bit of MR. So you have both options done. Now your last two items, probably also counter items. You kind of want to pay attention to what the enemy team is going for. But a generally good item is going to be Gaia Greaves. Gaia Greaves is always going to be good on her. And the last item is definitely Flex. So I can tell you a lot of items, like over 10 items that you can build. Just pay attention what the enemy team is building. Anything that I said works in jungle as last item will probably work here in your last build, so you can opt into any of these tank items. You can go Frost Guard, you can go Giant's Ring, which is probably preferred here, and ironically this might be the best option for you. And you can also go any of these items like Salvation and Tainted Blade. Alright, so let's talk about her entire kit. Let's start with Herser. That's her passive. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Again, I am not really native English speaker, so I might get these pronunciations a little bit off. The whole point of her passive is that you have 5 stacks. You can see it in the bottom left or middle bottom left of my screen next to the Q ability. You see how it has 5 stacks and it's glowing. Basically the way this works is every time you auto attack, let me quickly use my passives, there we go. Every time I auto attack, it goes up by 1, as you can see, and that will enhance my next ability. Something like the Q will proc it twice. There you go, you see 2 procs because it's per strike. My E will proc it once. My dash will also proc it once. And if I quickly use the passive, there we go, I use my passive, if I press R, I will get 5 stacks instantly. So that's the passive. Now let's move on to the abilities. Something important that I actually forgot to mention about the passive is that you can see the glow on her when she has the passive. So let me quickly get the passive. You can see the shield is glowing, the axe is glowing, and she's kind of have like some glow around here to show you that she has her passive up. That means that her next ability is going to do something a little bit different. Terra's Q ability, that is her primary, I believe. Basically, it does 2 swings of damage, and that's it. Once it's empowered, however, it will do a 3rd swing. The 3rd swing will do true damage. As you can see, it's a white number over there. That means it ignores all the armor that the person you're hitting has, right? So it will do more damage into people building armor. It will still do more damage even to people not building armor because of base armor values, but yeah. That's basically her Q ability. Something to note about her Q, actually, the hitbox of her Q will actually hit somebody behind her on the first swing, but it will not do it on the second swing. Also, if we go to the empowered state, it will do the same thing. The 3rd hit will also not hit anyone behind her. So this kind of tells us that the first part of Terra's Q is an AoE around her. It doesn't matter what you're looking, but the other 2 hits are actually just right in front of her. So we'll show it one more time, AoE around her, and then double hit in front of her. What this means is when you are trading with someone, you can even do something like this. Let's say the steel is chasing me, I start my Q and then I turn around, hit twice, and run back, right? So that's very good depth to know. It is very, very useful. Right, now let's talk about her E ability. Her E ability does magical damage, but it scales through physical power built. It is a long-range ability. You can throw it, and it basically is an axe throw of some sorts. I'll try to maybe show you with VFX-wise. It's really hard, but it's basically a straight line. It doesn't have any weight to it, so it will just go where you are aiming it. It does magical damage, as I said, and it also slows whatever you're hitting. So, for example, the steel right here, throw it to him, and it slows. If I hold it, you'll see the range right there. The range is basically just about right here. So that should hit, and of course it slows them. Not too far in terms of range, but it is definitely sizable. Like it goes a decent distance. Something important about her E is that it also goes through minion waves. So for example, right here, you can see I'm literally throwing it through the entire wave without any issue. If you have 5 stacks of your passive and you throw the E, instead of actually slowing the target, it will root them like this. Also, just because you guys might ask, it does not go through enemy heroes. Once you hit an enemy hero, the X will just vanish. Let's talk quickly about her RMB. Her RMB is a channeled ability where you increase the distance of the dash. If you cancel this ability, you get refunded half the cooldown. The reason you don't see the refund is actually because I have ability haste going. So you can see that this is a 6-second cooldown. If I start dashing and then I cancel it, it goes on a 3-second cooldown instead of the 6 that is mentioned down at the bottom right. Now, something important is that damage actually scales depending how long you hold this ability for. So for example, if I just throw it like this, I just did 258 damage. If I hold it a little bit more, It did 325 damage. Let's hold it a little bit more. It did 384. Let's hold it all the way now. It did 492 damage. So the more time you hold it, the more it becomes, it does damage. It's important for you guys to know that you can hold it for much longer after it does do the full charge. As you can see, it did the full charge. I'm still holding it. That's because it allows you a little bit of more time to kind of bait the ability or something, or bait some sort of CC from the enemy team. The important thing to know though about this is that it does not increase your damage after you went to the full length. So the damage is only going to go up until that point where it reached max distance. All right, now let's see it in action. Basically, just a dash. If you can jump alongside it, you do go down a little bit. You cannot aim up or down. That won't work. I'll give you an example of using it from like a higher elevated platform. Basically, you start going down near the end of the ability. Gravity kicks in a little bit late, so you can kind of hover over. There's not really many spots on the map that I think you can abuse the fact that it doesn't go straight down instantly, but there might be one in mid lane from the platforms, if you guys know what I'm talking about. The one different things that happens with this ability, if you do hit an enemy target, she stops and she stuns. It is called a micro stun. The stun is not for too long. It's only 0.25 seconds, basically allowing you to catch someone out and do a small stun. It also kind of knocks them back a little bit. So it's not much, but it's a slight knockback. It doesn't do much though. So that's just about it. What you see right there, I was actually glowing green. What that means is actually my empowered state. So let's quickly get our empowered state. Once this ability is empowered, your charge will actually give you a shield, I believe, that is based on your max HP. As you can see, the shield is pretty nuts. You gain a 974 shield if you do hit somebody with the shield. The shield does not get applied only if you hit enemies, but also a wave. Of course, I hit more than one minion, but it will only apply the shield once, because that would be absolutely broken. Finally, let's talk about her ultimate. Her ultimate does no damage, but it does a lot of other important things. First of all, it cleanses any debuffs you have. That is any sort of CC, any sort of anti-heal, any sort of slow, anything that is considered a debuff by the game. Even something like a stack like Basilisk stacks, where it's shredding armor. Even something like Harvest Nettles from Faye. If she hits you with 2 Harvest Nettles, that's considered a debuff. And even something like Drongo Rad Rounds, where it's doing the max HP bleed, you can cleanse those as well. So those are all debuffs that you can cleanse. Of course, it also offers many more things. The first thing that I already mentioned previously is once you use R, you will get 5 stacks of your passive. Of course, there's also a visual indicator for you and for the enemy team that you are in your ult form, and also a bit of a change on her appearance. Once you ult, you also become unstoppable. That means you will not be able to get CC'd or any form of CC that includes Drongo Silence, any form of stun, any form of knock-up, any form of grab, suppression, any of those sort of CC abilities that will not do anything, and you can just go ahead and swing away. The last important thing about her is actually a passive integrated with the ultimate, and that is that she gains 26 physical armor and 26 magical armor passively. That means if you go into the store, these stats are included in here, and once I press R, you can see how she is getting more of these stats. We'll wait until the ult time's out, and you'll see these stats drop. There we go, they drop right back. This has been Terra Showcase. Hopefully you guys do enjoy this video. Hopefully you guys learned something that maybe you guys didn't know about Terra's kit. I will see you tomorrow for another Predecessor gameplay video. Peace out, gamers. Have a good one.